Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We welcome you to yet another podcast. That is, we are going to cover on the security of the 4G and the 5G networks. We welcome Mr. Akib Sayyed, who's the founder of Matrix Shell and a leading security enthusiast who's been leading solutions to address the security issues of the 4G and the 5G network. Let me just start with this journey a little bit. A graduate from Pune Engineering College in 2012, and in fact, he was struggling with a few of his subjects in the engineering college. With his permission, I say so. But however, his passion for the security made him to dwell into the issues and understand the telecom security from a little closer perspective, because of which he in fact demonstrated his capabilities in one of the security conferences where he found a vulnerability in one of the leading operators' communication network. And his passion finally led him to expand his knowledge and broaden his horizon for the telecom security domain. With a large experience of working in the corporate for around 10 years plus, he has worked for various national and international operators, helped them with their penetration testing, and with his knowledge of the security and how these communication protocols, the security vulnerabilities affect the telecommunication network, he has founded certain security solutions. So he's here with us. He joins us to share his experience and tell our audience as to what all are the various dimensions that should be addressed while India is on the pace of expanding its 5G coverage across the country. So let us hear from Mr. Akib Sayyed the journey of the network evolution from 1G to the 5G. Let's understand from him what are the security aspects to be addressed when it comes for the communication between a handset and the core that runs behind somewhere else. How is the shift from the hardware-based infrastructure to the cloud-based infrastructure in the 5G is going to impact security? How should the security be handled when it comes to the roaming aspects? How should the security be considered when it comes to handling the smallest element of the ecosystem, which is our SIM card, and possibly now in the virtual form, that is the eSIM card? So we're going to take you through the entire landscape to how the security is being handled in the 4G and the 5G networks, and therefore what are his recommendations and his views, being a hands-on person. Over to Akib, and let's hear from the man of the day, Mr. Akib Sayyed. While we dwell into the 5G security domain, let's first understand for the audience as to how has these telecom networks evolved from 1G to 5G. What elements actually got added or got replaced or had an equivalence in terms of the functionality. And because of these elements, how has the shift in the security happened? If you could just kindly walk the audience of this transition of these networks from 1G to 5G.
Okay, let's talk about the 1G first. 1G was entirely analog one, and nobody uses the 1G now. But later on, when we added 2G, we had time division multiplexing and frequency division multiplexing, and these were entirely the real start of the digital communication here. So speaking about 2G, we had the BTS, we had the base station controllers, and we had the core network. So 2G initially was only intended for the voice, but later on they went on adding the services like SMS, then they added USSD, then they added the data to it as well, which is called as a 2.5G, which is GPRS, or 2.75G, which is eGPRS. Then 2G initially, speaking about the 2G and 3G, you will see that there's a separation between the packet switch network and the circuit switch network. So initially in 2G it was entirely a circuit switch network, which was only about the calls, SMS, etc. But later on they added another part to it, that is a packet switched. So when we speak about the circuit switch and packet switch here, there is a separation directly from the base station controllers. What is a base station controller? It is a device that actually controls the different towers of the 2G network, like channel allocation, etc., or deallocation. And whenever we move from one area to another area when we are in a call, so it is the base station controller which does the activity of handing over your cell phone communication from one tower to another tower. Now, speaking about the core network of 2G, we have MSC, we have VLR, we have HSS, we have EIR. These were the network element. But when we added another part, that is 2.5G, we added SGSN, GGSN, and the internet access here. When we moved to 3G, most of the terminologies changed, but some of the terminologies upgraded in terms of the software support. So the BTS, which was there in 2G, it's called as a Node B now in 3G. and the base station control which was there, it is called as a RNC now in 3G. And speaking about the core network, we have the same SGSN but the software upgraded version. We had the GGSN again upgraded to the software version, which is also called as the release 99. And then we have in MSC also we have upgraded the software so that it can support the 3G networks as well. Now when we move ahead to the 4G, then again the architecture is entirely changed. So initially, we used to have radio network controller or base station controller, which used to control the operations of the tower. They introduced all this functionality into a single system that is called as a Node B, that is Evolve Node B. This Evolve Node B is taking care of all the decisions which was combinedly taken with the help of BSC or BTS or the RNC or the Node B. And you have only one network element which actually takes the decisions of all the radio resource control part. But when you want to, you might be thinking about how do we do the handovers then. So these BTS communicate, this eNode Bs can communicate between each other and take the decision by themselves. Speaking about the core, as we move ahead from 2G, 3G to 4G, we have entirely packet switch network. There is no circuit switched here, and this circuit switch network is comprised of MME, S gateway, P gateway, and the HSS, and the billing entity that is a PCRF. So 5 network elements entirely create your entire 4G network. And but if you see, you must be noticing that there is another issue that we will be seeing here that we'll be discussing ahead as well about the security. Every generation comes up with this new security issue, but patching some of the old security issues that is there. Like, you must have heard the news that, fake base station or the MC catchers. Those attacks are still possible on the 2G network because the 2G network doesn't have some, mutual authentication. 3G added some mutual authentication to it. 4G added some extra layer of authentication, or not authentication, I'll rather say extra layer of encryptions or extra layer of verifications it added. Coming to the 5G, if you see, all the network elements are segregated now. They're entirely in a software now. And one of the best part who are interested in the 5G is that who want to learn the 5G, they can actually simulate everything in a software inside their own PC. 5G also come up with something new terminology that is being used a lot in IT, that is a cloud-based architecture. So entire 5G that is being deployed nowadays in a commercial network as well is entirely based on the cloud network and entire software. Initially in 2G, 3G, 4G, we have seen that there are huge routers are there which were performing the functionality of the S gateway or P gateway. There was a MSC which was like at least a 42U rack. Okay, that was there, but those are completely out of the focus now. You can even have this small computer like a Raspberry Pi, and you can entirely simulate your entire 5G core in it. So that is the level of change is there right now.
Great, wonderful insight into the journey of this transition. Before we move to the core security aspects, for the audience, let us understand this ecosystem picture. What I want to ask you that would you like to just comment on from the national level in terms of percentages? What percentage of you think the 3G networks are still in place, 4G network and 5G network?
I'll start with the 2G first because what I'll tell you one best part here, which is most of the time the economics that drives the economics of the operators. Operators are thinking that for 2G to run a 2G network, I only need a 200 kilohertz of bandwidth. To run a 3G network, I need a 500 megahertz of bandwidth, and to run a 4G network, I need minimum say 5 to 1.5 megahertz of bandwidth. Okay, so what operators are preferring, they're trying to remove the 3G network but keeping the 2G network, and they're trying to keep the 4G network and the 5G network. The game they're trying to play is most of the so I will not tell you about the only one country. I'll try to tell you in general. So let me give you one example here. Let's take example. I recently been to USA, but I was still able to find the 2G network there. The reason behind that is they say that we have removed the 2G, but they are supporting this for the purpose of roaming. So in certain cases, no matter whether you have 4G or whether you have the 5G, you need to have some backward compatibility for the roaming purposes. Okay. Now coming to the percentage, honestly, I'll rather say that in India most of the urban area is covered with the 5G, Most of the urban and rural is covered with the 4G, and 2G has a great penetration already. So, and if you must have seen that in India as well, some of the operators removed the 2G network. Sorry, they removed the 3G network, but they are keeping the 2G network as it requires a low cost to maintain, or it utilizes the less spectrum. But for 4G and 5G, of course, you need a bigger spectrum, higher processing capabilities. So it also adds the capex to you.
Well, also I'll not go into the network architecture planning, but will from this clue I'll just take on to the aspect of security. Now that there is a major percentage of still retention of 2G because of the bandwidth that it needs. I mean, per channel, which is 200 kilohertz, and it has 8 slots possibly, I think.
Yeah.
So that goes into the typical GSM domain,
Yeah.
which is the 2G thing.
Yeah.
However, in the 4G, the bandwidth offer, which is 1.4, 3 megahertz or 5 megahertz or 10 megahertz or 20 megahertz carrier. So an operator of a large scale operator, which kind of, we have some major operators in our country, so they may like to go, I think, with minimum 10 megahertz bandwidth is the one, because of the bandwidth that we advertise, 150 Mbps as a downlink and 50 Mbps in the uplink, to support those kind of, and these are in any case peak carrier throughputs. With this, what I wanted to understand that how do you see the security is going to coexist when the 2G is also in existence and the 4G is also in existence? I'll come to 5G later on, but let's say that an operator wants to do away with the 3G because finally he has to invest in the infrastructure, whether it is 4G, and I think even India is coming up with rolling out 4G networks also pan-India across various states, while the 5G also is being rolled out by the private operators. But how is the security going to coexist when 2G is also going to be there, which you say that based on your experience, you notice that 2G is still there, and when this 4G security is also being implemented?
So I'll put it this way. Let me tell you one thing. So most of the time what happens is 4G, it requires, as we discussed, it requires a bandwidth in megahertz, and it doesn't have much wall penetration or the building penetration rate. So sometimes operator push you back to 2G, so it is called as a circuit switch fallback, so that you can receive a call. But I'll rather say like this is, let's take example, you want to think about the security of it, right? So initially I'll talk about first the encryption, then I'll talk about how it can again impact as well. So when I was testing the networks for 2G, which was having which has a coexistence with the 4G, we have seen most of the time whenever there is a circuit switch fallback, the operator activates the 2G connection only for that time being. That you don't have service at the 4G now, you go back to 2G temporarily, and after the call is serviced, you come back to 4G. That is the one option. But while doing this, they're adding the authentication to the 2G network, they're adding the A5/3 encryption again, which is not breakable. But there are some phones, like a feature phones, which doesn't have support for the A5/3. Okay, so at that time they're actually using the A5/1. But when we do the testing and when we suggest the operator, boss, you should not allow A5/1, you should not allow A5/0 or A5/2. Now, speaking about the coexistence, let me tell you one thing. I'll talk from the core perspective initially, because core is the major security issue. Because let me give you an example. If you want to hack any phone from the air interface, you will need a good set of SDRs. You will need a hopping, fast processor that could do the hopping of the frequencies, and you will also need some good FPGAs, or you will need a good rainbow tables to crack the keys if it is A5/1, by the way. So, but hacking the 2G network in nowadays, if they are using A5/3, is nearly not practical. But it is still possible if you have the weak signaling network. Means there are some attacks available that allows you to recover the encryption key of the 2G communication without doing any cracking. You just need the access to the operator signaling network. You need the temporary subscriber identity of the phone, and you can just recover the key within a fraction of seconds, as long as the operator is vulnerable. So those attacks are there. And to prevent these attacks, operators have introduced the signaling firewalls.
Correct. But do you think that this also brings me to this thing, which means is handset a vulnerable element in this entire security thing?
I'll tell you one thing here.
The end user device.
I'll talk about that as well. So if you see operators, when they give the service, it comes out as COTS. COTS in the sense commercially off the shelf Okay, so anyone can bring in any phone which is capable of serving that particular technology, and you can use it there. So that is operator is allowing. This is actually a vulnerable thing in terms of implementation vulnerability. What I'm trying to say here is, anyone who's having the weak baseband big band implementation may be able to, maybe maybe exploited by anyone. But again, you need to have some good skills, good, like a very good skills to actually attack on a baseband. And every phone has a different version. Like, let's take an example. If you go to market today, you'll find at least more than 300 different different phones. Okay, which is every phone, and not every phone is using the same chipset. Hence, not every phone is having the same vulnerability.
Got it.
So you need to have all this all this capability. But there is another point which I want you to speak here is the zombie UE, that is a zombie phone. So what is happening nowadays is, you might be finding there are some phone app store application of the Google Play or somewhere where you download that app, by knowingly or by unknowingly you download that app, and it has some kind of a malware which is generating a DDoS on behalf of you, which is stealing your credentials. Okay, so this should not be this is actually introducing the weakness, whether it is a 2G, 3G or 4G. So I'll rather say that hacking, getting attacked or getting exploited due to the weakness of handset is a different thing, and getting exploited due to the human error is a different thing. And human error is the major cause of attack actually.
But if I have to mitigate this aspect of air interface encryption, in which the algorithms in the 2G, first I'm covering that part, where A51 is to be avoided, and A53 is the recommended one, which is still not crackable, even if you're on the 2G network. So do you think that, though it may be beyond our purview but technically speaking, if the handsets which only allow A53 algorithm implementation, so do you think that's one of the way to mitigate the air interface vulnerability of the communication? Because handsets or 2G networks could be used by the civil population who could be staying within the country or even near the border areas, or for that matter any other government official as well. So idea is this, that precisely if I have the authority and I mandate that handset has to have the A53 algorithm implementation, and only such handset should be used, do you think it mitigates risk on the 2G network to some extent?
So I'll say that mandating the communication to A5/3, I'll say that it is maximum it will create an effect of 20%. The reason, because 2G doesn't have the mutual authentication, means only the network can authenticate the phone cannot authenticate the network. The 2G, the 3G and above technologies are doing the mutual authentication. Means
so sorry to cut, but which means the aspect of, if there's a fake BTS which is put across, let's say to ultimately let the subscriber latch on to that fake BTS. So that is still possible in the 2G. So what attacks for the audience? Could you just little explain it? How will that happen, and how is that attack going to ultimately affect the subscriber who has a SIM card registered on a particular operator's name, but a fake BTS comes up? And so what are the risks to that in terms of communication or loss of data?
So I'll explain how the fake BTS attack actually happens. Imagine a case you have a phone which is having 2G, 3G, 4G capability, and it is having the active SIM, and you have the active network as well. And someone with the fake BTS comes into your area or near your vicinity, and he start broadcasting the GSM network. First thing he will do that, he will set his network priority as highest. Secondly, if you have the 4G capability, 4G has a vulnerability of a downgrade vulnerability. So before that, I'll explain you what exactly happens in the 4G is, whenever the 4G sees the new network of the same operator, it says that I want to register there as well. So this is called as a tracking area update. Right. So what exactly happens is, whenever the phone performs a tracking area update on attacker's fake BTS, he will say that, hey, you are not allowed on this network. You should go to this 2G network. These are the parameters. And the phone goes to that 2G network just like that, and the phone stays there as long as the user wants to it, and as long as that fake BTS is running. And if you reboot your phone, even then the phone will first connect to the fake 4G tower. That fake 4G tower will again send back to a 2G network, and you will be still stuck with a 2G network. There are mechanisms to detect it. You can detect this attack inside the SIM card. You can detect this attack inside the phone applications as well. But of course, you need to have some APIs to be exposed from the baseband, or some APIs to be exposed from the SIM cards as well. So yes, this can be detected, but eliminating this problem in 2G is not practical. Only thing you can do is, you can instruct the SIM card or instruct the phone that, okay, don't start connecting only. For the same reason, Google is going to implement one new feature in Android, that you can forcefully turn off the 2G network, that no 2G network at all. This is what is going to be there in the upcoming Google Android releases.
Akib, I just wanted to understand that in this 2G network, as we discussed, that how the network topologies are evolving, or how the architecture is actually coexisting across the nation and across the world also, where 2G is coexisting with 4G, or whether 4G switches to the 2G network in case of the weak coverage, or there's a circuit switch fallback happening. But wherever in isolation one is forced to use a 2G network because of primary requirement of voice as the means of communication, in that case, what are the security risks which are there? How are the aspects of like fake BTSs, which could be a risk to security? How are they practically being exploited? And what are the countermeasures in those scenarios?
Okay, so let's take let me give you the real world example where the 2G could be a requirement. Only 2G could be the requirement. It could be a hilly station, or where reaching out to the certain masses is not. Data is not priority. Only voice is priority. So let's take example area such as the borders. Okay, there someone is putting the towers, or someone is putting and another country is putting the interception units. So first mandate should be A5/3 encryption should be mandatory over the air. Second one should be authentication frequency on the each communication should be increased. This will increase the complexity of the attack. Let's take example. I'll tell you, you have a 2G network, you are talking on 2G network, and you cut the call and you made another new call. At that time, the network should re-authenticate you and reassign you to a temporary subscriber identity, and then only you should allow the call. This will add little latency, but this will ensure one thing: whenever the phone is authenticated, you get a new encryption key, and whenever the new temporary subscriber identity is assigned to you, new TIMC is assigned to you, it becomes difficult to identify which user was this. Okay, as every time you will see the new temporary subscriber identity is being assigned. So this actually gives a really good protection in terms of 2G network when it comes to the working with the actual operator. But when it comes to the fake BTS, there is a way that you can run your network. Say we have a two tower next to each other. One is a fake and one is a correct one. Okay, one is a real tower. At that time, there is a way that operator or the attacker could jam the existing tower which is real, and he will use the parameters such as mobile network code or mobile country code, and with this combination he will host another GSM network. And there is something called as the synchronization channel in the GSM, that is SCH. It is so SCH channel it is called. He will block that SCH channel, so the phone will not be able to latch onto the correct tower, and hence it will start looking for another channel which belongs to the same operator. But on this same operator, he will not be able to perform the authentication, because the fake BTS always accepts the phone without authentication. And then when you try to make a call, if you have the A5/T only algorithm supported here, the network will not be able to understand what communication you're trying to do here, if it is A5/3. But if you're using, if the network is asking you, okay, don't do the authentication, don't do the encryption, then consider this as a red flag for you, because fake BTS never perform the encryption at all.
So this is where the aspect of mutual authentication comes into play. Now that you told that, how is this ultimately going to get exploited by a fake BTS, which possibly will use the same country code, same network code, and emulate a network so that when the handshake is happening between the handset and the tower, that is the BTS and the controller's backend, there is no authentication, because a fake BTS would never ask for the authentication, and it is the tower which initiates And since in 2G, the handset doesn't authenticate the network, which is a vulnerability I think which has been addressed in the 4G. That is where the
Even in 3G as well.
in 3G as well. So that is where the security upgradation happened from 2G to the 4G. So great insight I think for the audience. And taking it forward, now when we come to the 4G network, before we come to actually the 5G, which is the current existing telecommunication network, which is coming for the mobile broadband access. In the 4G network, let's start from in the architect, that is the user end device, that's the UE side, the user equipment side. And let's take down from the UE to the E node B, and from the E node B to the EPC, which is the evolved packet core. That is parallel to the MSC, in fact, what we call in the GSM networks. Can we walk down from the first element, that is the UE? In fact, within the UE also, could you just describe the audience what are these layers called in between? That is between the UE and the E node B to the EPC. What are these non-access stratum or the access stratum? How is security handled for the signaling and the data and the communication part, since 4G is entirely IP? So if you could just walk us through this journey, starting from, in fact, not only from the UE, I would also, or maybe we cover the UE first, and then I'll come to the sub-element of the UE, which is the SIM card.
Right.
Later on. But let's start from assumingly that things start from the handset, and let's take them right to the core, and then what all are elements, layers are there, and how security is implemented.
So speaking from the UE in 4G, the UE has defined two types of communication here. One is the access stratum, where you send your user traffic, and one is a non-access stratum, which is used for the purpose of registering the phone on the network, performing different, frequent communication with the telecom network. Okay. So in UE, there are two types of encryption and there are two types of integrity checks. One encryption is for the basic, in general, air-to-air communication encryption and air-to-air communication integrity check. And there is something called as a non-access stratum. It also has the encryption. It also has the integrity check. So it is like, you have a pipe, which is the encrypted pipe and integrity protected pipe. Under that pipe, inside that pipe, you will find another pipe for the non-access stratum. And this non-access stratum is again protected with the integrity and again protected with the encryption. Okay. And speaking about this as well, right? But here, the user data on the air interface, apart from the air-to-air communication, it is not encrypted. Like the access stratum has its own encryption integrity check, but the user traffic doesn't have this encryption. So there was one attack which was very famous in LT, that is alter attack, which utilizes some kind of a weakness of this user traffic, non-encrypted user traffic. Okay, and it actually tried to exploit this. So this is the one. And as we move ahead to the E node B, after E node B, apart from non-access stratum protocol, everything is unencrypted. But remember one thing, whatever data you send in a non-access stratum, it goes till the MME. MME is the first entry point to the your EPC. Yes, it is like a gatekeeper for your EPC. So this entity receives the non-access stratum protocol as it is. So I'll give you one nice example here. If you have some vulnerability that is specific to MME, okay, MME non-access stratum, you can directly exploit it directly from the UE. Okay, you can directly exploit this directly. You can, if you have some corrupted message that could crash the MME, so you craft your non-access stratum message, okay, as per a payload, and you send it via E node B to the MME. You can, if the MME is vulnerable, it might crash, it might perform some other activities as well. So this is the major part here. And remember one thing, if you see the telecom security involvement, you'll see that they're protecting the roaming network, they're protecting the corporate network, they're protecting the operation and maintenance network, but all the attacks are moving toward the UE side now. So UE has to be stronger, UE has to be robust, UE should have, and whatever data received from UE is not in the control of the operator. Operator doesn't have any control apart from the specification. So anything that is coming as a garbage, first entry point to this is a radio network, your E node B. E node B should be robust enough to handle the garbage data or some random data that is being sent by the UE. Then whatever is data encapsulated in the form of the non-access stratum has to be again when it reaches to the MME has to be robust enough to handle this. So this is all about the non-access atom and access atom possibility.
And when you move forward from the MME to the serving gateway and the
when you move forward
packet
from
gateway.
MME to PGW and SGW, so whenever the data from UE goes to the E node B, from E node B it is converted into the GTP protocol, GPRS tunneling protocol, that is GTP-U. Okay, and from there it is relayed to the SGW, and SGW will relay it further to the PGW, and PGW will relay it to the internet. Actually, here the attack probability is less because the parameter in the GTP-U which are actually utilized and which are actually passed are very less. So that attacking on the GTP-U part is very like I will not say debatable, but I'll say that very less chances of it. Yeah.
So one of the important entities in the EPC is the HSS, which is basically, I would say, the key storehouse of giving you the seed key, and then from where you actually generate the other keys.
Right, exactly.
So could you comment on that? How is the security supposed to be ensured for that, or what are the risks which can actually originate from that element of the network?
Okay. Now, I'll before we talk about the HSS, which is the 4G version of the HLR, I'd like to take you to the 2G, 3G. Okay. Initially, in 2G, 3G, anyone can query anyone. But as we move to the 4G, they have defined a specific interface will talk to specific network element only. Like MME and the HSS could only talk to each other on the S6A interface. Okay, S6A is one of the interface in the diameter. Okay, and you can send only specific number of messages only in it. Okay. Initially in 2G, 3G it was not possible. Yeah. Okay, so when we come to HSS communication, right, you can fool the HSS if there is no enough signaling firewall or enough protection. You can fool the HSS and ask him to route the information to wherever you want to route it. Means, let's take example. Currently we both are sitting here. Okay, I have your IMSI, and I from the UK hacked network, I am telling the HSS of your provider that Mr. Vineet currently is in UK now. Send all his incoming parameters back to UK. So what will happen? All your services and everything will be queried back to me, asking me, okay, this is the data for Vineet. Please deliver this data to him. This is what is possible with the HSS. But remember one thing: whatever information is received by the HSS, it has to be mandated for the MME to follow it. Means, if the HSS says that Mr. Vineet has access to the private VPN or a private APN of the military, the MME has to give the access to it. If the HSS says that Mr. Vineet has uplink speed of 100 Mbps and downlink speed of 50 Mbps, he has to follow it. So all these parameters, HSS is the one who dictates all these parameters. This is called as a subscriber profile.
Correct.
Yeah.
So now, in terms of to ensure the security of these networks, since we all are users of 4G as well, what are the key recommendations you would like to make to ensure that so that as a user and as an operator?
There are two things.
What can I do as a user, and what should an operator do to make sure that these aspects of security are addressed?
We'll start from the user perspective. We have seen, we all must have seen the Jamtara, right? How they try to fool the people and all. So there is one more scam that is happening nowadays. That is, your bank is going to block your communication. Please update your banking detail. This is the APK file for the application. You download it and you run it. User should not fall for such a traps. Okay, that is the only thing I'll say the user can do right now. Okay. Because as long as you're securing your communication, see, let me tell you, it's like this. Operator has given you the SIM card. It means operator has given you the key to access your services from the operator. Correct. As long as you keep the access to this key secure, you're secure. Let's leave about the 0 days and all the part behind right now. Okay, as long as you're not giving this access to this key to anyone else, you're secure. But speaking from the operator's point of view, operator has a multiple ways to secure. He needs to secure the radio access site, the place where they put the tower. He needs to secure his signaling in the sense the roaming signaling, because most of the attacks happens from the roaming network. Now you might be saying, okay, if every operator is trusting each other, why do they hack it? See, I'll tell you one reason from here. Let's take an example. You are, say, one operator which is, say, small scale operator. So let's talk about, say, Mauritius, or you'll talk about some island based operator. You are there, you don't have enough resources to secure yourself, so someone hacked into you, or some for just for purpose of generating revenue, you leased out your diameter network or SS7 network to someone else, and you don't have the way to monitor whether he is using it for the legal purpose or illegal purpose. So it is like that, whenever you speak to the roaming operator, you should not trust any operator who's communicating with you. So operator needs to implement a signaling firewall there that will protect the communication, and it will potentially prevent the misuse of it. Okay. Then when you come to the corporate network, from where the operation and maintenance of the operator happens, there you should have the strict firewalling policy. You should have the strict PAM access, or the identity access management solution, which will audit what happened, who did it, why he did it, and some level of permissions to certain level of users. Those needs to be maintained. Now coming to the third side, that is the OEM side. Let me tell you one thing. There was one case which we were solving. At that time, we noticed that at 12 a.m. in the night, someone is accessing from the neighboring country. It was one of the OEM from that country. Some data used to go there. There's some strict policies to be there around the OEMs as well. Like India did a great step by banning that OEM in India. So these things has to be there.
So Akib, you just mentioned about as to what a user should do, and ultimately from the OEM, from the operator side, you just mentioned that an operator needs to make sure that the trust on the roaming network and the signaling protocol, that whether it is SS7 or that, so that trust should be established, and blind trust should not be there while you offload the certain services, or you connect with the other operators in roaming network. Right. What are the other dimensions that also should be taken care by the operator?
So another dimension is that the OEM should the operator should have the strict policy against the OEM accessing the core network or the information, export the information of the operator's network outside of the country. Means you should not allow anyone from the OEM apart from the debug logs to be exported outside of the country. Who knows what information is there in that? There should be some kind of a sanitization framework, or there should be some kind of policies to be implemented by the operator, so that not all the information is exported outside of the country. Yes, OEM do need to export some data in terms of some crashes, in terms of some debug logs, but there should be some sanitization framework has to be there, or some level of policies has to be implemented, so that there should not be any crucial information or critical information going to the OEM.
So in this case, when OEM has his own network, he has to even possibly at times upgrade the firmware or the base software in the eNode Bs or the core at times. So what kind of best practices are being followed in the industry, so that this aspect where possibly the OEM may land up not closing some ports, and may land up exposing ultimately due to those open ports, which may get exploited by some adversary or by some attackers. So how would you actually, what are the best practices which should be instituted by an operator for this, to secure this aspect, that the leak doesn't happen through the OEM inadvertently?
So usually whenever OEMs implement anything, there are multiple tests happen there. First, OEM will test in its own lab that, okay, this was the software, this is the upgraded version of it, and I'm going to implement it now in the lab. He will do all the testing and everything in his own lab. Then if the operator is big enough, he will implement it in the operator's lab. There they will do the testing. They will validate it. If the operator has a good practice in terms of cybersecurity, they will do the cybersecurity testing in the lab itself. Okay, and then it will be implemented in a production. And whenever it is implemented in a production, it is never loaded with the full traffic immediately. They will offload one by one, slowly, they will offload the traffic. And once the traffic has been completely transferred to the new network element, they will decommission the older network element. But yes, there could be some chances that, when you decommission the network element, there could be sometimes, some public keys, private keys, or some keys being exposed, or some configuration information which is having some crucial information of the network. That has to be sanitized again whenever you're decommissioning the new node.
Great insight, I think. And from here, I would like to take you from the 4G nuances which we have covered, starting from the UE side to the eNode B and back to the core. And we discussed about some elements within the core which are important, and how should they be addressed to ensure security. Now that India is on the rolling path of expanding the 5G coverage pan-India, Could you just describe the audience the important key elements, how they have changed from 4G to 5G, and therefore now how has the security controls or security aspects now required to be addressed to make sure that our networks are secure for the citizens and the government stakeholder, the enterprises who are going to use this 5G?
Okay, so we'll start again like we did in the past, like in the previous type, like we'll start with the UE itself. So UE has multiple security capabilities already inbuilt there. Initially, till 4G, the MC, which is a unique subscriber identity number, is used to send in a plain text to the core network. But now, if in 5G, it is entirely encrypted, and it uses a public key and private key based combination to encrypt the MC. And if anyone is sniffing the air traffic, he will only see the encrypted data. He will not see he will not see something else than that. And as this MC travels to the network, it never gets revealed to the actual value until the authentication is successful. And this authentication is only successful after the entire communication is secured. And let's take an example. You have a phone, you're trying to register over the 5G now, okay? And when you're registering over the 5G now, you send the encrypted MC to the core network. The entry point here is, in 4G it was MME, but now here it is AMF. AMF will generate the authentication parameters for it. Will send once he receives the authentication parameter, then he will send it to the phone. Authentication will complete it. Then the internal network elements such as the AUSF will say that okay, whether the authentication is completed or not. Initially in 4G, it was MME who is to decide whether the authentication is successful or not. But here, the home network, and in the home network, the AUSF and the rest of the network element will decide whether this authentication is successful or not. Now, you might be saying, what is the benefit here, right? So let me take you to the roaming network here. Let's take an example. You have a 5G network in, say, USA, and you are an Indian subscriber, and the network, you register on the network. Then the 5G network of USA will not confirm that you have successfully authenticated until and unless the Indian network tells you that it is successfully authenticated. Okay. Initially, how it was the US network has the authority whether to certify this Indian subscriber is successfully authenticated or not. This is called as a home-based authentication verification. Another point is that when we move ahead to the air interface, or when we move ahead with the G-Node B as well, so access datum protocol is also integrity protected as well as it is encrypted as well. And when we move towards the core with the AMF, there is a segregation here. What kind of segregation? That is called as a CUPS, CUPS, control plane user plane separation. What it does is it allows you to scale in very easily. If you want to scale up your network very easily, you'll easily scale up your network. That is, you can go on adding the packet gateway such as UPF, and you can go on adding the signaling part as well. If you have, let's take an example. You have
UPF for the audience is user plane function.
Yeah, user plane function. Yes. So when you speak about the separation of the user plane function here, okay, you can go on adding the UPF without needing to upgrade the rest of the network. And
if you could just tell the audience, why do we need UPF?
Why do we need UPF is okay. I'll come to that point. See, whenever we've seen a non-access datum, access datum. Non-access datum is entirely part of the AMF, then AUSF and rest of the network element who are handling each other. Okay, and if you speak about the UPF will be actually delivering your data service. Okay, UPF will be actually giving you internet access. It will actually giving you access to the IMS. It will actually giving you access to the slices. Okay. Slices. What I mean by slices is the actual data access to the slices, not exactly.
What packet gateway was doing in the 4G is being done by UPF in the 5G. Right. Is it correct for the audience?
That is absolutely correct.
This is
they removed the SGW.
Got it.
Because technically speaking, it was unnecessary. Okay, they just removed the SGW and they just convert the packet gateway into the UPF now. Okay, but when we now let's talk in a separate way now. We'll talk about the packet. User plane, we'll talk about the signaling plane. Okay. Now in control plane, when you speak about that, everything is end-to-end validated. What I mean by that is, even if the communication happening between the two network element, it is validated with the OAuth, it is validated with the PKI based encryption. Okay, and the best part, which all of the audience who are using the burp suite will love it, it is HTTP2 and JSON. Okay, because 5G is entirely now HTTP2 protocol. It is not at all using SS7, which was for 2G 3G. It is not at all using 4G, but now it is entirely HTTP2.
So how does that increases the vulnerability in a 5G network, and therefore what are the challenges now for the CISOs of the telecom operators or the CISOs who are supporting this IT services or pen testing? So how do they challenge the increases with this HTTP2 coming as the communication protocol
I'll come to that.
between the entities?
I'll tell this. See, initially, let's take an example of our country, India. That is Bharat. Okay, so we have Airtel, we have Jio, we have BSNL, we have Vodafone. Okay, these four operators are there. But there is another opportunity coming up in the telecom network, that is a private network. And private network that could be ranging from 10 subscriber, 100 subscriber, 1000 subscriber, right? So this adds another area for small players to start developing the 5G core. And Indian ecosystem has many people who are developing the 5G core. So I was talking about, how the HTTP2 actually, creates additional of the exploitation. If you see, we have seen some issues in the SS7 and diameter that, these are the protocol level vulnerabilities. But now the vulnerabilities will be coming from the human configuration error. There will be vulnerabilities will be coming from the implementation based error. Okay. Now let me give you one example. Speaking about the HTTP2 vulnerabilities, right? Initially, if you see the SS7 protocol or diameter protocol, the issues were in the design. In SS7, the issues were, no authentication, no encryption, no integrity protection. If you speak about the diameter, though there was some capability for the security, no one utilized them. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell you here is the issues that we are going to see in the near future will be like a heartbleed. We have seen the heartbleed was implementation error, not the protocol error. Protocol, which was there, like let's talk about the OpenSSL or the SSL. Okay, it has all the facilities. Encryption is there, authentication is there, integrity protection is there. But the way it was implemented was wrong. Same issues you'll be finding in the network element. Now, I'll give you one test case here that is a part of the Indian government standard for the 5G security. You cannot have the duplicate key inside the JSON protocol when you're communicating with the 5G network element. Okay, this is just one test case, but this has big impact in the background. Okay, this can cause a confusion in the network element if there is no duplication is checked. This can cause some kind of like a overwriting of the existing information is there. It is something called as a stuffing the multiple values under the same key in the JSON. Okay, so these type of attacks will be there. This type of attack will be coming up in the future. So what the step that Indian government is taking is, the Indian government has developed the ITSAR. These ITSARs are actually part of the, the huge research in the back end, and it is based on a 3GPP as well as the Indian government's own research. And this is being implemented now in the 5G network. If any Indian OEM or any external OEM, like a foreign OEM wants to deploy any 5G network inside India now, he has to pass this ITSAR test. Once he passes this ITSAR test, then we can say that yes, this network element is capable enough to sustain some kind of I will not say some kind, but it will say that 99% of the security can be ensured here. The same type of standard is being implemented in a different part of the world, like ENISA or the European consortium is coming up with the same. The UAE or the Arab countries are also coming up with the same. So, and the GSMA, which is operators organization, they're also coming up with this as a NISA's Network Equipment Security Accreditation Scheme. So this will ensure that whatever the network element that are being deployed have some level of security in it. Yeah.
This standard would also apply to our security entrepreneurs who are trying to build up 5G core.
Yes.
Or the G Note Bs as well?
Yes. So Indian government has defined the security standard for every network element, be it a 4G or 5G, be it a 4G radio or 5G radio. They have defined the standard even for the SIM cards as well, and you have to implement it. You have to get your SIM cards or your 5G network or 5G core network element has to be certified. Then only you can deploy you can be a certain surety that my network element can withstand any attack that is coming when it is deployed in the private network.
So for the audience awareness, could you also tell that, so are you conveying that the standard addresses the security concerns right from the SIM card to the handset as well, to the eNote B and to the core elements?
Yes, it is. So Indian government has specified the standard for the mobile handset. They have specified the standard for the SIM card. They have specified the standard from the RAN. They specified the standard for the core. But I'll rather say that when we speak about the standards for the handset, they have defined it for the two types. That is one for the application processor, and they have the standard for the baseband processor as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But do you really would be able to control the various handsets that are coming in the market?
Honestly speaking, these are the generic standards. Okay, this will say that there should be some kind of a fuzzing has to be completed on certain protocols which are exposed. So if you see about the say G Note B, if you say so, G Note B has a NGAP protocol. Okay, which goes towards the MME. So NGAP protocol has to be fuzzed from the commercial fuzzers or the homegrown fuzzers, and once these protocols are fuzzed, then you can say that okay, this G Note B, it will withstand any garbage or some kind of a attack. It will withstand, and it will not go fail on that.
Great. So if I simply ask you to tell the audience who are working in this domain or who are the potential, they could be managing security for the operators. Mm-hmm. So, or they could be handling procurement of the security products or the 5G core elements or anything. For them, are you trying to convey that? What's your view on this? That if the equipment which claims to pass the muster of the ITSAR or the standards which have been set by the government, what is the I would say the level of reliability that can have on the security by the mere passing the certification muster?
So if any OEM claims that this our network element has been certified or is passing the ITSR, he has to first approach the government of India. The government of India will present him the available labs with whom he can go and check his network certified. And the report is not validated by the lab itself. Lab will present his report to the government of India department. Department of Telecom will have another entity that is called the NCCS. They will verify whether the actually test happened or not. So, it is not the lab only who will certify this. Lab will present the finding to the government department will verify it. And once the verification is done, then only the certificate will be issued.
Sorry, this is a security topic that we wanted to discuss, but it brings me to a dimension which I want you to address. That do you think that we'll be able to scale up and the rollout when it comes to security implementation, especially 5G coming in the enterprise network, private 5G networks are coming out. In any case, countrywide rollout is happening in the 5G. So how is this going to get addressed? So are there adequate labs in the country? Because if that's
so far where there are very few labs, I'll say we will be the one of the lab in future, for sure. But there will be this will be addressed because the government is making it mandated only after there are any efficient number of labs available in the country. So far, government has made a voluntary certification for the IP routers and the Wi-Fi CPE so far. But later on, as the adequate number of labs will be coming for the 5G as well as for the 4G, they'll be making it mandatory soon.
So what happens till then? So do we stall? So is the 5G going to get stalled?
So about the government initiative that is about the ITSAR, right? So what exactly it is bringing up, it is bringing up the awareness, okay, among the OEMs, among the operators, okay? So these, whenever any OEM comes to any Indian operator that, we want to implement our network element in your network, right? So they should have this certification to be taken from the government certified lab or government accredited lab. And once this lab gives the report to the government will validate it and, give the certification to the OEM.
So I'm sure with these initiatives which government has taken by bringing out certain policies and certain lab test cases in form of the ITSAR labs that are going to come up in the country. So it's a step in the positive direction. However, would you also recommend that while this initiative scales up, what are the other security aspects that an operator or the security entrepreneurs who are building the core elements or building up the G Node Bs and or the from the handset side? So, how should we address the security requirements, and what are the challenges we see, and therefore how should they be plugged while this initiative scales up?
So there are one activity for the each, like for OEM as well as the operator. OEM should have the one internal process for developing the telecom network element. Okay, they should follow some policy. They should define for some policies around it, like secure coding practices. Then they should have the recurring penetration testing on their network element. They should have the fuzzing test to be run on their network element. They should read the specification that are defined by different organizations such as GSMA, Indian government, as well as from the 3GPP, and implement those network element inside their application. Okay. Then speaking about the operators, they should have their own internal due diligence in terms of penetration testing, in terms of stress testing. All this has to be validated by the operator. Okay, either in their lab, or they should visit the OEM's lab and see that, okay, these are the tests that are being happening. Or some, you might be saying, some kind of, they can at least review some of the processes that the OEM is following inside their organization. This is what an operator can do. But when the network element is deployed in the operator's premises, operator should do a thorough check of the each and every policies or each and every configuration that is being deployed inside the network element. Because see, the OEM will give you multiple features. Not every one of them is needed for the operator. So they should check what all features are needed for me, what features should be blocked, what should be the level of access. Like if you bring any new network element into the network, okay, you should take it under the umbrella of the IAM or the privilege access management. You should do some kind of a gating for it, like a firewalling for it, so that certain ports are blocked, certain services are not allowed, maintaining the user privileges. Everything has to be done by the operator. Once that is there, then the operator can be at least minimum sure that this network element has been configured well. It has implemented the operator have implemented the required configuration only. This is necessary for the operator.
Okay. So while these open source tools are available, the codes are available to simulate on a simple machine or a VM, on a personal machine, laptop, also to learn about these nuances about the security while it is implemented for the 5G network, starting from the handset to the core elements. But if, as a student, I have to learn, or we wish to recommend to our audience who could be budding security enthusiasts who are keen on entering the security of a telecommunication network, and when 5G is on a rollout and we need more capable people who understand security, to build up a graded roadmap for them, what is your recommendation to build up the roadmap for those security enthusiasts whom the industry can tomorrow absorb, and they can subsequently become leaders to take forward the security of the 5G network that India is rolling out?
So, like I was telling you, you should understand what was the XG technology issue. Okay, then when we come to the 5G, first understand what are the network elements, how they communicate. Okay, then you should understand the different algorithms that are being used. Okay, then speaking about, when you talk about learn how the 5G core works in terms of the OAuth. Okay, you should understand the OAuth concept of the web applications. Then they should understand how the placement of the network element should be. Like, let me give you an example. The 5G has different proxies, okay, like a web proxies, which allows the segregation of the network element at certain level. Okay, so they should understand which network element has a higher weightage in terms of security. And once it is analyzed, then he can write his own like a stride model for the purpose of analyzing the threat around it. Once he is able to analyze the threat around it, then he can do some research based on the 3GPP specification. 3GPP has a specification for each and every network element in terms of security. Once you understand, these specifications are all open for everyone. Anyone can download them and see it implemented. And of course, when if you say, let's take example, you want to do some research in 5G, you should be able to code some APIs inside your Python, or if you want to use any programming language, you should be able to code those APIs so that you can write your own tool in that. Typically speaking, you can you can generate your own code using the YAML file, which are available online. This YAML file has the specification of each and every 5G API. So you just generate a code and you just keep on writing the different types of the exploitation. And once you are through with it, I think you're good to go. Now, some people might want to say that, I want to do a fuzzing. So how should I do the fuzzing? So there are some APIs exposed inside the 5G core that allows you to directly send the APDU to the SIM card, not APDU, but non-access data message directly to the phone and receive the response directly from the phone itself. So these are the APIs which are available, so which you can use it to fuzz the UE. You can write your own. There are open source library that allows you to write your own fuzzers for the purpose of fuzzing the 5G core, whether it is a non-access data protocol, whether it is a NGIP protocol, or the HTTP protocol, or PFCP protocol. You can do it on your own. And initially we used to need, to run the signaling stack, you need to have a specific setup, specific router. Okay, that is not needed right now. You have everything inside your laptop, and most of the communication, or most of the the packet traces and everything, you can see directly at your laptop. I'll point for one more point I would like to bring to attention is, initially there used to be only 3 to 4 operators to look for telecom security, but now as the private networks are going to be there, the demand for the telecom security expert is going to grow exponentially. Not only in India, outside of the India as well, mostly the European countries as well as for the US countries, where private networks are already being deployed. Okay,
right. So Akib, so how can Matrix Shell and you as a founder can help those budding security enthusiasts?
So how we can help is, we frequently we do give the training in the different types of cybersecurity conferences. We also have some of the simulation tools. Some of them are freeware as well on our GitHub, where you can just simulate the different types of network. You can simulate 2G network, you can simulate 4G network. Of course, these are all based on the open source, and some of our own tools are also there, which we have released it under our Git repository, which they can just utilize, like a Linux system, and they can simulate the 2G, 3G network. They can simulate the 4G network as well, and practice some attacks on them. And of course, these are free for everyone. And recently we have done one telecom village activity in USA, where we were actually giving the free workshop for the SS7, free workshop for the diameter. We also released some CTFs for the SS7 and diameter network. Soon we are currently in phase of building the 5G CTF, which will be entirely based on the HTTP APIs, and we'll be releasing it soon as well, hopefully by the next telecom village.
So I think great. I think part of it, maybe we can plan for our ecosystem, so that the audience who are watching this and maybe keen on understanding a little more nuanced aspect of the security in 5G, maybe it will come very handy to them.
And we are happy to help whoever wants to learn about the telecom security. We can give him like an entire path for him. Like most of the time we receive the requests from the freshers who wants to learn about it. We tell them what they can do with the help of open source, whether it is 2G, 3G or 4G. Yes, for 4G and above, you might not need the specific equipment, but for 2G, 3G, you might need some specific equipment such as SDRs and all. But 4G and above, which is today's reality, you don't need any specific network element apart from your laptop.
So coming back to the security aspect of the 5G network now that is in place, I want to understand bring a little different dimension. With the 5G, as we all understand, primarily it's a low latency network. It supports high density of the subscribers and offers you tremendous amount of bandwidth, which we say the enhanced mobile broadband communication that it supports. With this thing, there is an important aspect which 5G has introduced, is network slicing. Now, network slicing allows the enterprises to use the same network by sharing the resources which are uniquely configured for them, right from the spectrum sharing to the resources which are going to be shared at the core element.
Right.
Now, what kind of security challenges does it introduce for the organizations who may like to ride over the existing commercial OEM networks, and what all security measures should be ensured for them, so that even if I piggyback over the existing operator's network by using the slicing functionality of the 5G which offers me. At the same time, how should I ensure the security of this sliced network? What all are your recommendations?
So a major threat that we might be facing in the future between the slicing is, inter-slice communication. So most of the time what operator does is they keep the network in a load balanced mode, or sometimes they might allot a specific resource for the specific slice, but there could be a human error, that is a routing. If you face any issue in the routing, if you make a routing in a wrong way, there could be an inter-slice communication which might utilize the resources of other slices. Or you might be able to reach, let's take example, we have the basic slicing, that is EMBB, enhanced mobile broadband. You have low latency communication for a URLLC. You might be able to communicate between both of them, and you can cause some disturbances. So let me tell you one thing, one more point that I would like to bring to attention is network element, the telecom network element are just becoming a pipe now. Whatever you do inside the pipe is not the telecom operator's business now. Means telecom operator will say that, okay, I'm giving you path from A direction to the B direction. Whether you want to use the encrypted communication in it or whether you want to use the vulnerable communication between it, it is the end user's responsibility here. So let's take an example. If you are using two slices which allows each other to communicate, and if you're using the vulnerable network application inside it, then of course you are vulnerable there. Yes, operator can add the managed security services on the top of it, allowing the blocking of the unwanted communication, allowing the blocking of unwanted ports or unwanted types of protocols. Yes, that operator can give it as an add-on there.
I think this then increases the complexity of maybe writing the cybersecurity SOPs that an organization will have to follow to ensure that their slice portion of the networks are sanitized, always tested by doing some pen testing against them.
Okay. And one more point is that you should adopt to the AI ML now, because most of the time you must have seen is it becomes a very complex job to analyze all the traffic rules or analyze all the firewall rules. It becomes really, really complex for a single person or a team of person to handle. So there should be some kind of automation to be brought into the penetration testing. There should be some kind of automation to be brought into into analysis part of the rules. And there should be some kind of analysis to be done in terms of any changes in the network that has to be automatically addressed, whether it is a good change or a bad change. That is needed here.
And I'm sure you are driving such initiatives of bringing up these solutions. And I'm sure those who are interested can always reach out to you to know a little more insight into that. But tell me, from the security perspective in the 5G network, routing seems to be one of the issues which you just mentioned. Right. Possibly misrouting the engineer who would have misconfigured or let's say reprogrammed a false route for the testing purposes, but failed to restore it back or to update his routing table. So while routing is one of the dimensions, what are the other dimensions, and even including routing, if you like to throw a little highlight on this aspect, what dimensions in a 5G network can actually have an impact on the security?
I'll say that,
and bring the network down or the services down.
I'll say that as long as operator as well as the users take care of their network, they should not use the outdated software that could be vulnerable on the user side, as well as operators should not allow the communication patterns which are not required. Means you should not see certain types of protocol on the particular slice. Okay, you should not see certain types of communication on a particular slice. Operators should implement this blocking. Honestly, it is not the operator's job right now, because operator is just giving you the pipe, but operator could add this as a managed security services. Now, speaking about the user, let's take example. I took from one operator, I took a slice for the purpose of URLLC. Okay, I need the low latency network. I need when I speak about the low latency network, I'll make sure that I send the small packets all the time, so that my data reaches to the destination very quickly. Okay, now what we can do here is we as a user make sure that I should not start flooding the network. I should have the gated policy for my communication. These all points has to be addressed from the user point of view. Now, speaking from the user's perspective, right, we operator and the user both have to take care of their network. Like, as a user, if you are using the 5G network in terms of different slicing, or as a corporate user or in a private network, what you should be doing is you should not use outdated software. You should allow the certain policies from your UE. Like, let's take example, if you are running if you're using the URLLC as a user, what you should be doing is you should not use that slice for any other communication than the URLLC. You should not expose the ports that are not required on the slice. Okay. Now, speaking of from the operator point of view, operator can add certain rules in that for that slicing, that you should not allow the IP address range from the other slices. You should not allow certain protocols that are not needed in that slicing. This is all has to be taken care by the operator. Okay. And speaking from this point of view, there could be many services, extra add-on services that you can add for the security point of view, like adding certain firewalls, adding certain filtering rules, whether it is for the purpose of network, whether it is for the purpose of the web application that are being used in any slices. That is going to be the best way to actually handle it.
Great. So let me add a new dimension to this overall security ecosystem of the 4G and the 5G network that we are discussing. An important element in the mobile communication within the user handset, which I mentioned earlier also, is the SIM card, which I would say is the heart of the communication at the user equipment side, the UE side. Now, SIM cards coming in the physical form, and SIM cards are now coming into eSIM cards.
Right.
What are the security nuances associated at the physical SIM card level, which should be taken care while the SIM card is being burnt? Let's say there's an private enterprise network which wants to implement its private 5G network. What all security aspects should that enterprise ensure to ensure that the intra-communication within the enterprise, which is dependent on 5G, the SIM card doesn't become the vulnerable aspect from that perspective? And for the common operators like you and me use on everyday basis, and how is supposed to be security handled when it comes to eSIM card? I just want you to tell the audience, both from a technical perspective and any kind of policy intervention or change that you recommend based on the way you handle security.
Now, speaking about the SIM card issue, right? SIM card will be mostly the problem of the SIM card will face the mostly problem of the supply chain. Let's take an example. SIM cards are getting manufactured at the OEM's place. Then the information about the SIM card and the SIM card are shipped to the operator. Sometimes whenever during this shipment, or sometimes if the OEM get compromised, the information about the SIM card, that is the initial profile inside the SIM card, may get compromised. Okay, and if this profile is get compromised, then it is a possibility of the SIM cloning. Now, as you can clone the SIM, you can create a replica of that as well. So how you should be handling this is, you should give only the initial profile whenever the SIM card is being issued as a new SIM card. Okay. Then whenever you activate the new profile, what you should be doing is you should assign the new identity when the SIM card actually gets activated on a subscriber. This is the one way to tackle this. Speaking about the eSIM, the supply chain issue is there, but not in terms of the way it was in the physical SIM. Let me talk about that as well. So whenever we speak about downloading the profile inside the SIM card by scanning the QR code, okay, so there is an encrypted communication between the SIM card. Notice my point. It is a SIM card and the operator's SMDP, okay, which is a eSIM distribution platform. It is encrypted between them. And anyone who is in the chain, even the phone cannot listen to this communication, or a phone cannot, decrypt this communication. What I mean by listen to this is phone cannot decrypt this communication. Okay. And this is entirely based on the PKI defined by the GSMA. GSMA has defined a separate PKI for the purpose of issuing the SIM card, eSIM card, Okay. Now, when you actually download the SIM card and you activate the SIM profile, at that time, only the operator and the SIM or the eSIM has that information. And even if you have access to the physical SIM card, you won't be able to recover it. Okay. Now, coming about the general practice that has to be implemented for whether it is a physical SIM or eSIM. Now, SIM card has a different parameters in terms of using the type of encryption, using the type of applets. Applet are the small application inside the SIM card, and using the certain configuration parameter over the SIM card. This is applicable to whether it is a eSIM or whether it is a physical SIM. Now, these security parameters, such as patching the SAT browser vulnerability, enforcing encryption and integrity check whenever there is a new software being installed inside the SIM card, or whenever there is a communication from the OTA server, over the air server is there, OTA server is there. From the OTA server, where any communication is happening, it has to be encrypted, it has to be integrity protected. These all parameters has to be taken care by the operator.
Okay. And from the eSIM card perspective, what are the associated risks that have come across you while you handle the security? And therefore, how were they mitigated or how should they be addressed?
So speaking about the threat through the eSIM or physical SIM, I'm bringing the physical SIM again because SIM swap is the major threat that is going to be faced in the future. Because once you delete or once you lose your phone, and if you want to reissue the SIM card on your name, there has to be certain procedures followed from the operator side before issuing the new SIM. If there is an insider threat, then there is a chances of reissuing the SIM on another same SIM card to the another user. Then the another user can use it to intercept the OTPs and do the banking transaction. Now the most of the telecom world is facing the challenge of the SIM swap attack, where attacker gathers the banking information of the target, then perform the SIM swap attack on behalf of the target by using the insider threat.
But doesn't the network recognizes that there are against the same number there are SIMs operating within the network from two different places?
So whenever you issue a new SIM, when you swap, which is called as a SIM swap, the older SIM gets deactivated and the newer SIM gets activated now. So that is the same thing here.
Does it increases because of the eSIM introduction?
I will not say that because of the eSIM, but it becomes easy easy because of the eSIM. Why? I will tell you. If I have to get a physical SIM issued for myself, okay, I have to go to the store. I have to purchase it from there. There might be a chances that my identity could be revealed there.
Akib, just tell me that we just discussed about the physical SIM, and while we were talking about this, I wanted to talk about eSIM. So when the eSIM's introduction is going to get introduced, is going to increase actually. And we are doing away gradually with the physical SIM cards. We may do away with the physical SIM cards. So what all measures can a SIM manufacturer and the operator can take to mitigate the associated risks in the 5G networks when the number of eSIMs subscribers may actually increase? Because handsets support dual SIMs, in which one of the SIMs could be physical, the other could be a SIM, or they could be now, we could just do away with physical SIM. So what all security aspects should an operator or a SIM manufacturer should take to ensure that the security is intact of the 5G network or the 4G network?
So whenever operator issues any new eSIM, right, so there should be some strict parameters has to be configured for the SIM profile. Now, when you download a eSIM in your profile, it doesn't mean that you are downloading a new SIM. You're downloading a SIM profile inside your SIM card, which is like virtualization. So one eSIM can store multiple profiles. Same way, one computer can host multiple virtual machines, right? So that particular eSIM profile becomes specific to that operator. So operator can configure the strict policy in terms of updating that eSIM, disabling that eSIM, and only the operator should have remote communication capability for that particular eSIM, and the keys which are used to communicate with this eSIM should be randomized, should not be common for all the eSIM profiles.
Akib, while these networks are now expanding, 5G rollouts are expanding, 4G is already coexisting when the 5G rollouts are happening. How do you think that when in the roaming within the country, or let's say outside country, how is the security aspect supposed to be handled? Or what are your recommendations or view or the risk associated now? And therefore, how should they be addressed when it comes to the roaming aspect in the 5G network, where it is coexisting with the 4G network?
So when you speak about the 5G roaming, there are two types of roaming will be considered into this one. That is, one is going to be the SAA roaming, that is standalone roaming. Another is going to be the non-standalone roaming. When you speak about the non-standalone roaming, it will be entirely based on existing 4G network, okay? And when you speak about the standalone roaming, it means whenever you go to the country where you want to have the 5G roaming, it supports the 5G standalone communication. Now, initially in previous technologies, there was no communication encryption, okay? Everything was a plain text, okay? So in 5G, they introduced another network element that is also called as a signaling firewall, which is called as SEPP. Okay, so this SCPP is a edge protection proxy that actually does the work of encrypting the end-to-end communication. So whoever is mediating this roaming connection between the two operator, so this SCPP is protecting the communication. And speaking about the data traffic and the rest of the communication, everything is taken care of here. Okay, now you will not see the issues that we have seen in the older technologies, like like a call interception using SS7 or a data traffic interception using diameter. These attacks you will not see in 5G roaming, but there is a long way ahead till we reach the 5G SA roaming, because right now most of the networks are not even capable of providing the 4G roaming. Okay, so you will see the Western countries are providing the non-standalone roaming, that is NSA roaming, but still no country has even started the standalone roaming so far.
But just for the sake of clarity for the audience, when we are mentioning about the non-standalone mode and the standalone mode, in standalone mode, the G Node B and the core are absolutely pure 5G, whereas in the non-standalone mode, the G Node B is a 5G radio. However, the core is a 4G network. So therefore, when in the non-standalone mode communication happens, that is the NSA mode, when the communication happens, the control plane information goes over the 4G, and the data plane communications happens between on the 5G interface, that is between the handset and the our G Node B. So the principal difference. So this is what the context I think that we were talking about. So any other aspect of that should be addressed in the roaming from the security perspective?
See, roaming most in earlier days, which is not changing by the way, was considered as like a blind trust, based on a blind trust. But as the attacks are being uncovered in the roaming interface, many operators are getting aware, and they are only exposing, and they should only expose what is required. They should not expose all the network element. They should not expose all the traffic patterns. Okay, sometimes attacker can use the network to using the standard roaming protocol and exfiltrate the data as well. So operators should have the deep packet inspection as well on the roaming interface, just as to see what exactly data is going out of my network. See, I understand the point that you cannot do the DPI in a large scale for the user traffic, but at least for the signaling traffic, you should have some kind of a DPI, so that you understand what exactly going out of my network and what exactly is coming inside my network.
Great, Akib. One quick question which I want to just immediately ask. 5G has a use case of supporting large number of devices, and we are going to see a large number of IoT devices getting connected, which is the principal, I would say, the advantage of the 5G network, because it supports large density of the subscribers. With the penetration of the large IoT connected devices, which may be using 5G as the backbone communication network, do you see any impact on security? And what are your recommendations to handle the vulnerabilities due to or the risks which will get introduced due to induction of the large IoT devices on the 5G network?
See, I understand the point that there will be huge number of network elements, there will be huge number of devices to manage, but for sure we need to add the security controls in terms of firewall, in terms of proxies for protecting the web traffic, in terms of adding some restricting some ports, in terms of restricting some different types of certain types of communication only. This is all is needed when it comes to whether it is a less number of equipment or more number of equipment.
Got the point.
That is there.
Got the point. That brings me into one last question that I would like to ask you before we wind up this discussion. What are Akib's recommendations? While India is again on the rollout of expanding the 5G coverage pan-India, 4G networks are definitely existing and they're going to stay there for some time. So what are Akib's recommendations for the security entrepreneurs who may want to contribute to build up the security ecosystem for the secure 5G networks for the India? What are your recommendations for the policymakers from the security perspective? What are your recommendations for the operators and the OEMs? So if you could like to give two points or 1 point each, whatever are the key highlights for these four stakeholders, that is security entrepreneurs, policymakers, OEMs and the operators, so that we have a robust security network, telecommunication network of 4G and 5G in the country.
So for the security entrepreneurs, there is too much room for developing the protection application in terms of defense, in terms of offense, okay, in terms of detection. There's too much room for those security entrepreneurs to develop these applications. There are very few startups working in terms of 5G security. Speaking about the private 5G security, there's a huge room there. Now, speaking about the policymakers, there should be a unified policy. There should be government should draft, or the policymaker should draft a minimum baseline security standards. Okay, government should make sure that a framework that is followed by each and every, whether it is a private operator or a public operator, they should follow this some kind of a policy mechanism in terms of penetration testing, in terms of audits, in terms of a secure or OEM policy. Okay, speaking about the OEM, they should follow the some standard secure software development policies, as well as they should go on frequent penetration testing of their softwares. They should employ the robustness testing of the softwares. Speaking about the operators, see, 5G network and the 5G protocols are becoming more and more open. So you will see the huge number of people, including the script kiddies who will use the ready-made tools, including the top level hackers who will try to exploit the network. This is going to be there, and this is gonna increase in the future. So operators should be prepared for this. Operators are right now focusing on the roaming security. Operators are focusing on the internal security, but they are leaving the one crucial entry point, that is the handset of the subscriber, where the malicious user can create a zombie network of millions of cell phones, or he can create a network of specific users, so that which can perform certain types of attacks. So operators should also be prepared from the user point of view, or the subscriber point of view, that attack may come from that entry point as well.
Great, Akib. It was a great insight from you. You being the hands-on person handling security, steering security, actually understanding how security works. You yourself have implemented so many solutions, which I'm sure are going to be very handy to the operators, not only in India but across the globe, to make sure that security, which is a necessity for every citizen on the earth, as we say, one earth, one family, one future. So ensuring that these security implementations are unique, they are unified, they are uniform practices to the best extent possible. We hope that the rollout of the country's 4G and 5G network is going to have a tremendous and robust security, with all the tips and insights that we have got into this small talk that we tried to capture various domains. Thank you very much for joining in, and we look forward for further engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vineet. Thank you for everything.